So this last Sunday at the Nocatee campus, where I preach on Sundays, we had a low attendance Sunday. So normally we have around 500 people at Nocatee. We had like 450 people at Nocatee.
And that's bad news for Spencer because his pay structure is predicated on attendance.
That's exactly right. I'm going to talk to you about that later. So
transparency.
So it's a low attendance Sunday. We were actually talking about that as people were walking in on Sunday morning. Me and Seth, who's our worship pastor, and that's known. It's been like that ever since I've been pastoring at churches. Memorial Days, this low attendance Sunday. Daylight savings time is a low attendance Sunday. The Sunday after Christmas is a low attendance Sunday.
Sunday after Thanksgiving.
Sunday after Thanksgiving.
That's so sad to me because you come back ready to go for Thanksgiving and or ready to go for Christmas
Yeah.
and like, where's everybody go?
At? So Memorial Day to Labor Day kind of marks the beginning and end of summer for a lot of folks. And so once Memorial Day hits, you enter into what many pastors call the summer slump, right? So you say, oh, we're in our summer slump right now. And what you mean by that is, hey, not everybody's here. Like, there's some people that are just gone. And so I actually was just thinking about it this week, and I just want to talk about missing church. This is something I feel like you either talk to church members about or you don't, because they don't talk to you about it. But it's something I know pastors talk to each other about all the time is, hey, I'm concerned about this family. Like, they're only at church 1 to 2 times a month. And then there's people that are traveling this summer and they're going to go up to, visit family and wherever, and they'll have a decision to make. They'll miss church here at First Baptist, but they'll have to decide whether or not they're going to go to church out of town, and they're going to make that a priority. So just let's talk about this for a second. Why should you miss church? If you're a Christian and you're someone who professes to know Jesus, go to church, what are good reasons to miss church? And I just want to hear you share, each of you, what are good reasons to miss church? And then I'm going to ask a follow-up question about something very specific.
Because you have the stomach bug and you don't want to share that love with others.
So sickness is a good reason to miss church. Do we all agree about that?
Yeah.
Okay. Any others?
Richard doesn't miss when he's sick. But.
Yes.
Depends what kind of sickness.
Any other reasons that you think are good, legitimate reasons?
Well, if you're physically unable,
physically unable,
whatever that might, some immobility or something like that.
Does brain surgery count?
That would be an immobility.
Good reason. We've got precious members at our church that want with everything they have to be here, but they just can't.
Some are homebound more permanently. Some it's more of a temporary thing, a surgery or whatever. Some it's a sickness that week, or they're caring for a sick family member too. If you're out of town,
traveling,
there's lots of reasons to be out of town. Now the question is what to do when you're out of town and how to plan that travel. That can be a follow-up question if you want to go there.
Okay.
But if you're physically not here, you can't come to. If you're not in Jacksonville, you can't come to First Baptist Jacksonville.
So sickness, traveling. Anything you'd add?
Yeah, the thing I would say, and this is the assumption of what you're saying, is what I lead with is don't miss. That's right. Like, we just made a decision as a family, we're not going to miss. When we miss, it is the exception that proves the rule. Like, hey, listen, your church needs you. Yes. You need your church. You don't want to slip into. So we just don't make decisions that are going to have us, at least regularly, out of church. So don't miss. And then as long as that's your bent, I almost don't even care what the answer to the other thing is. Yeah. Like, if you're the kind of person who's like, I know it's important to the Lord that I'm there. I know it's important to me that I'm there. I know it's important to my family that I'm there. Well, like, if you called me and said I can't come to church on Sunday, I would never be like, what's wrong with you, Spencer?
Yeah, that's
because I just know
that's
your heart's in the right spot.
Right.
So,
yes. Okay.
You should want to be there.
Right. Yeah.
And that doesn't mean it's always easy, you're tired, the kids aren't cooperating or whatever, but you've just made the commitment as an individual and as a family that this is what we do.
Okay.
This is what we do. And so we prepare for it, right? Whatever that means on Saturday night, the routine, Sunday morning, how much time you need, who needs what help, what time you plan to get there. Like, this is just what we do. We do it every single week. And like, it's almost like, I hear the spirit of what he's saying, and I agree with that. But like, you kind of have to justify not doing that. Like, something out of the ordinary is happening.
You want to hear something that used to discourage me when I started ministry that's actually begun to really encourage me? Is when people fall asleep during my sermons.
Okay.
And let me explain why. It may be because the sermon's bad, but
Heath doesn't have that problem downtown.
Nobody
no
ever
one ever falls asleep. They're
What's
all
going
on the
on?
edge of their seat.
Remind me to check on what's going on.
But listen, so here, it's in the spirit of this question about missing church. So sometimes I look out on people and I'll see like a man falling asleep or an elderly person falling asleep or just anybody falling asleep. And you want to know one of the things I think about? I think they're super tired. That could be the result of the sermon. But for whatever reason, they're tired. And they're falling asleep, but they're here. You know what I mean? Like they could have stayed home and said, I'm tired, I'm not going to church today. But I would honestly rather you fall asleep in a sermon because you're tired than not be at church on Sunday. Now, could you go to bed earlier on Saturday night? Sure. Should I not preach a boring sermon? Sure. But what I'm saying is there's just means of grace in your life that just by gathering with God's people. And I'm just so encouraged by that. Okay. So I want to ask the elephant in the room question. I want to talk about youth sports. Okay. So this is the thing. So if you're in Florida, there's two things that I think as a pastor that we talk to each other about that we'd say, man, that's discouraging. Is people that are habitually missing church for youth sports. This is a niche Florida thing, and habitually missing church for Disney, right? But they're in the same
beach
or the beach or whatever.
Yeah,
like
Sunday's a great
and
day
I
to
think
surf.
and I think that so here's the I want you just to come at this with me. Talk to me about this. Yeah, we miss church. It's soccer season right now, so we're just out a lot. We get there about once a month, but we listen to the live stream on the way. Or hey, we're going to Disney, but we listen to the live stream on the way. What do you think about that? Like, what should we do with this youth sports and Sunday church attendance? And you have to be fully transparent. Remember.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I mean, just first say, I'm thankful that we do live stream.
Me too.
For those who can't come.
Right.
And so it does serve a lot of people, and I'm thankful for that, and I think we should keep doing that. But we should never think that is equivalent to worshiping God with God's people, right? Like being part of a church and going to church, because you go to church for a lot of reasons. You go to church, yes, to hear the preaching, yes, to participate in the worship music, but you're also going there to do all the one another's. You're going there to serve others. You're going there to be encouraged by the gathering of the church. And so none of that's happening in that case. That's not to say there's not a place for that, but that's not that can't be like, oh, that's just like a dietary supplement I'm taking. So there's that, and then even about talking about youth sports, but also vacations.
Just anything that would take you out. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so I got, like maybe you do a vacation rental and it's like a week rental, like Saturday to Saturday. Well, you don't have to go on Saturday. Like we've done a lot of times where we've left Sunday afternoon after church, or we had the rental till Sunday, but we came back on Saturday because we didn't want to miss church, or we've frequently done this. I know where I'm going to be, and I look up ahead of time faithful churches in the area, and I actually really enjoy bringing my kids to other churches. I need to know what I'm walking into. I don't want to walk into some gay affirming church or something like that. But if I can find a faithful church within drivable distance, within 30-minute drive or so, like we go, and you know what? That's a good experience for them. Even like, hey, people gather in churches, and it's different, and we have an interesting conversation about what's different, what's similar. Around the sports question, man, that's there's so many things about that. So we've had to wrestle with that in a lot of ways. I think a couple things. Some of this we can get at it from like the practical issue, but I think just from a parenting point of view, first of all. So I think it's just helpful for most parents to recognize, like, all of our kids, with very, 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 very few exceptions, are all incredibly average, and they're not going to be professional athletes. So we don't need to train them to be that.
That's
okay?
hurtful, Richard.
I know you had aspirations for yourself, and your kids,
if I wouldn't have gotten injured, I would have gone pro.
Yeah, I know. The thing, it's this myth, right? Or or the elusiveness. Well, a scholarship or something like that, or opportunities, or I need to maximize all these opportunities. You just don't. And the sooner you recognize to free yourself of that tyranny as a parent, it is so helpful. First of all. Second of all, yes, there are probably some other decisions you can make for giving your kids sporting opportunities. Part of the question is, why are you doing sports other than they just enjoy it? Because if you just we're all in and I want them to compete at the highest level and get the best coaching, well, then they're just going to ask for more and more and more money, more time. They're just going to keep doing that. And so you got to decide, okay, what are my goals for this child by the time they're, say, 18 or 22, whatever number you want to put on it, and how do we best get them to that point? And if I sacrifice everything on the altar of travel, whatever sport, baseball, soccer, whatever, then that's going to achieve that. And I'm telling you, it probably isn't. It probably isn't, first of all. Second of all, I'll just give an anecdote for my family, and we can talk more about principles. But so my because now I have as of last week I have 2 high school graduates now. So we're kind of like I can kind of see. So my oldest son, he was into sports. He played a lot of all my boys played every sport at some level. But my oldest son was the most into it, and he even graduated when he finished high school. He was a starter and a captain on the varsity lacrosse team. Okay, so he liked all that. When he was 11 or 12, I can't remember exactly, 11 or 12, he was, I was even one of the coaches. I was one of the coaches for his lacrosse team. I was an assistant coach, and he'd been playing since he was, I don't know, like 2nd grade. And he was a starter, a key member of the team. Everyone was depending on him. And we were in this, it was the end of the year kind of tournament. And I didn't think they were going to beat this team on a Saturday. The game was a Saturday, and they won. So that means now they get to play the championship game, which was the next day, and it was on like the college turf field in their like arena, and it was like amazing, and everyone's all the hype and energy. They're all super excited. Yeah. And he had several of the other teammates were actually members of our church too, or part of our church, and he was like, and he knew we didn't do sports on Sunday. We just didn't. We just made that decision. We didn't do it, And so that came. He's like, well, Dad, but it's the championship game. It's the last one. There's not even any other ones. It's just one Sunday. Can't we miss? And man, I was really torn as a parent. I was really torn because he loved it. He was all in. He had already missed plenty of other things for all kinds of church things all the time. And this is what he wanted to do. And he had other teammates whose parents were making other decisions, right, to go and not go. And it was like a big thing. And man, I wrestled with it. Tina and I talked to make sure we're on the same page, and I talked with my son. I said, son, I'm sorry, we just don't miss church for sports, and I'm not going to shoot him down because he cried, he really cried, and you know what though, he cried because he was sad, but he wasn't angry. He wasn't angry at me. And probably to this day, if you ask, I don't know what he would say. I should ask him, but you know what though? It didn't like derail his lacrosse career. I mean, like I said, he still played varsity lacrosse. He was still captain of the lacrosse team.
Now, how would you help him think about? So you got other parents who go to church here. How would you help him think about other parents who made a different decision?
I said, son, you know what? Every parent needs to make decisions for their family. And he's like, we weren't commenting on like, are they sinning or not sinning or something like that. So I wasn't making, we didn't really comment on this. I didn't make the decision because I'm principally a Sabbatarian in theological commitment. Right. We made a family discipleship decision that we just don't miss church for sports. Not like that, I mean, if we were out of town and something happened, I mean, I'm not saying there's not exceptions. I'm just saying this was like a moment where I had to draw a line in the sand for what we value as a family. And I'm sorry that he had to pay that price, but I'm kind of not, because I think he recognized how important that is. And he was away at college this past year. So I wasn't there to wake him up to go to church every Sunday. He didn't have to go to church, and yet he did. And he got involved, and he was serving in the church, and he made those decisions independently, and that's his plan for his family. And so I'm thankful for that. And you know what? Could he have maybe played collegiate lacrosse if we had made different decisions and invested in those? Maybe, but to what end? He plans on coaching his kids in that sport, and he's done enough to do that, and that's fine. So it's one piece of the puzzle of a lot of things, but we just said we weren't going to do that. And he was okay with it in the end run, and he trusted me. I think, like, okay, Dad, like, this is what our family does.
Yeah. Okay.
He wasn't angry that he couldn't go. He was just sad and disappointed about it. Yeah. Which I get.
Do you guys want to add anything?
I mean, I would say that the principles are, so like we maybe done it just a little bit different than you have. We've said we don't make decisions. You didn't say this. You didn't say anything different than this. We don't make decisions that sign us up for things that are going to have us missing church. So like there was this one time where there was this league and practice was on Wednesday night, and it was going to mean so it wasn't even Sunday. He was going to miss like a month and a half of Wednesday church, and we're like, we just don't do that. So we just didn't even sign up. But after we say we don't make decisions that have us regularly out, I would say I'm not interrogating anybody in our family or anybody in our church on the one-offs. So like, I don't even know who the other families in our church are, but if they went and let their kid play, I wouldn't be like, well, how come you're not as faithful as the Lucases?
And this was in Vermont before we were here.
There you go. Yeah. Okay, there you go. So figures.
Never at our church.
Never. So we wouldn't do that. We'd say, hey, listen, we just don't. And even I could even imagine a situation where, I don't know, we're going to do this one-off thing where we're going to Disney World on Sunday because my son's getting deployed and we're not going to see him for 9 months. And this, I don't know. I'm honestly having this conversation aware that we got between us, there's like hundreds of people that know all of us and that we're pastoring and thousands of people that go to our church. And I wouldn't want anybody to think, well, if you're not here, we're going to get a phone call. Because what we are emphasizing here is the trend that we're committed to being at church, and we're not investigating the one-offs or the individual.
And we didn't have a disposition of judging other people for making different decisions. That wasn't the posture. And I like the way you said that. I mean, and a lot of times if we did sign them up for some sort of league that did have expectations for our practice and this, like I just negotiated that on the front end. Yeah. Like, hey, listen, I understand you it's only Monday and Wednesday practice. Like he's not going to miss. He's not going to be able to make on Wednesdays. Can he still come and can he still play? And he's like, yeah. Like, okay. Or like, well, no. Okay, well, then we're going to go somewhere else. So we kind of just have that conversation in the front end. And and the assumption was not we're going to miss church. The assumption is we're going to miss that sport. Right. And I think, I see categories for exceptions and things like that.
It actually leads me. I know we're running short on time here. I'll just two closing thoughts on this. Similarly, I often see parents.
Where's that book?
This is called the Bible.
Oh,
yeah. I see parents at our church and kids that will show up on Sunday mornings and they're like in their baseball jerseys or their football jerseys at church, and I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, okay, you didn't have to come today.
Yeah.
You could have like got brunch as a family and headed to the ball field, but instead you're here. Or they come to our second service and there's already dirt on the uniform, because they played an early morning game, but they came, and I'm just like, that's what I'm talking about. Is that is a fundamental commitment. Do those families every now and then miss church on Sunday? I'm sure they do. For baseball. Does everybody make the same decision? No. What I was thinking of was the language of Scripture in Hebrews 10:25. So the author of Hebrews says, not neglecting to meet together as is the habit of some, right? But encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. It's so instructive. So what I would want to say to a church member is, what are your habits? That's the big concern is, it's like, are we only going to church once a month? Because we're so committed to sports, or we're so committed to vacations, or we're so committed to our boat, or whatever, as is the habit of some. But then I just would want to say, turn it on whoever is considering this question and says, the goal of church is you're missing out on the encouragement of the body of believers, and Jesus is going to come back really soon. Like, how will we have wanted to have spent our Lord's days when we know that Jesus could come back anytime? And there's so much encouragement that you can give and you can receive. And so just to examine your habits, I think is probably the most important takeaway that I want families to be thinking through is, are we quick? Are we just quick to miss? Are we quick to miss for whatever? Yeah. And what's our habit? I think it's
not a spirit of judgmentalism or a spirit of legalism. It's a discipleship decision as a leader of your home. That's exactly right. And it's what you value and what you think is the priority. And you know what?
That's right.
And here's the other thing too. If you're invested in your church and serving, then it kind of becomes hard to miss too, because people are depending on you.